Hello, welcome to Board Deck and Dice. Today we are doing a Kickstarter preview for AuZtralia, the new Martin Wallace game. Let's take a look at how it plays. AuZtralia from Martin Wallace sees players spread out across the map through the laying of rails, the building of farms and the gathering of resources. As players do this, they will encounter various monsters and enemies from the Cthulhu lore, and they will recruit military help to combat these monsters and defend from their attacks. Military can be bought with gold. Each action a player takes costs time, and the player at the back of the time track will take the next action. When all players have passed the purple old one marker, the old one will then start taking actions too. Farms that are touched by monsters become blighted and do not score points at the end of the game. Ports that are touched by the monsters become attacked. If a monster defeats a port, that is an end game condition. Fights and movements of the monsters are dictated by the card. Here, a vehicle would attack the winged beast, but it would do 1 sanity damage. The middle of the card shows which monsters will move, and the right of the card shows the damage that those monsters do to you. You play the game by allocating cubes to different actions that take various different times. If you want to use a place you've already used, you pay 1 gold for each cube already there. Once you've decided you've used enough cubes, you play the regain cubes and you take them all back. Keeping some cubes is important as they're used to mark damage on enemies. This action lets you take a personality which gives you a permanent or one-use power. For example, the Kitchener lets you take another personality card whenever you want. When the game ends through a destroyed port or all players reaching the end of the time track, players count up their points and the old one scores as well. I had mixed feelings, and so did the groups I played AuZtralia with. It is certainly there are mechanics there that work. I really like the time track. I really like the idea of the Cthulhu old one taking its turn. Most of my groups aren't familiar with Cthulhu, so we needed to check what each monster was called and that sort of thing. But yeah, lots of things worked well. I'm just not sure they came together in a satisfactory package for me and my group. Having said that, I think lots of people are going to get a lot of enjoyment out of this one. The way the player board works was probably my favourite thing. The fact that you're assigning cubes to action spaces, which doesn't block you as long as you've got gold. You can pay the amount of gold per cube already in that action space, and there's plenty of action spaces. I like the fact that actually you don't want to use all your cubes because they're what you use to damage old ones and Cthulhu monsters, and so they have a use outside of the action board as well. And also it just keeps everything nice and neat, and once you know how the game works, that board is really clear. Farms, we had mixed feelings about. We felt there perhaps should be some ongoing gain from those other than just victory points. They're going to get blighted mostly, and it's whether you use them to draw off old ones from your port or slow them down on their way to your port, because they will always head to the nearest farm or port, or even lure them someone else's port. However, having your port destroyed does not take you out of the scoring. In fact, in one game my port got destroyed and I had the most points out of all the players. That was quadrupled by the old one, but still I did the best out of all the players. So you could argue there's a strategy there. When you know you've got the most points, just let the old one destroy your port. I think the most frustration came in on 2 things. That was the amount of turns the old one got when they were at the back. They were often having 2 goes in a row at least. Sometimes if one of us moved further forward, it would be spread out a bit more, but it quickly fell into that routine of 2. So that meant up to 4 movements and an event happening, which can be quite a lot to do before you get your turn again. And I know you'll say, well, you should strategically plan and be aware of that, and you're taking a risk, and that is all true. But when what happens, which is based on luck to some degree, can be so punishing, it's hard to feel fair that you were treated fairly. The other thing is, and I was okay with this, but a lot of the people I played with didn't like the battles being resolved by cards. Now I understand there's a formula going on and certain troops are more effective against certain monsters, but yeah, that kind of idea of flipping the cards, seeing what damage you do, seeing what damage you take. One player even said they would prefer dice to that, and I could see what they meant. If you've got a unit that's good at doing damage and it doesn't appear 3 times in a row, it's a bit of a hard knock to take, especially when the damage done to you can be quite significant. And also the loss of sanity, which is one of the damage effects that the Cthulhu can do to you, is really harsh. You only get 3 of those, and once they're done, you're out of that battle, and that felt really harsh. So yeah, a bit of mixed feelings on this one. I think there's a lot to enjoy: the stockpiling resources, the making sure you get a big enough army and that your army can only attack things that are near enough. I like the random setup at the start. I like the route making through the game. Just some of the Cthulhu elements didn't seem to gel all that well for my groups, but I think for other groups they will be fine. Also for us, and this is different to other groups, I've seen other groups who felt this moved along at quite a pace, but for us, as soon as the Cthulhu old one came in, the piece that moves around after you, the game just slowed down an awful lot. And I know we're a bit different on that, but I just mention it because that might happen to some groups as well. So that's my thoughts on AuZtralia. If it's still on Kickstarter, there'll be a link in the description down below. Thanks very much for watching Board, Deck and Dice. We will see you next time.